When I first picked up Hollow Knight, I was met with one of the most inexplicable bursts of sentimentality and excitement as the two worlds of what I played during childhood and my more recent gaming addictions collided. The Metroidvania gameplay akin to Castlevania Symphony of the Night tugged on my nostalgic heartstrings, but the seemingly unavoidable parallels to FromSoft games and the Dark Souls franchise in general sealed the deal. I was instantly hooked, and I knew there was no chance of me putting the game down until I saw every single ending, boss, and content pack. And even now, well, I'm making videos about the game still, just because of how much the world of Hallownest has captured me. But I'm also a sucker for games that turn me into a hermit for short bursts at a time. I'm the kind of person that tends to bleed something dry once I find out I'm into it, and although this approach to gaming comes with its own set of pros and cons, it most definitely helped me out when I'm playing games like Hollow Knight. Struggling on a boss or finding my way over a skill curve doesn't last too painfully long because I'm spending every spare second I get with the game until I eventually overcome whatever it may be that has me stuck. But I'm aware not everyone is like this. In fact, there are plenty of people that actually prefer to take their time with things and have breaks in between pieces of content when they discover a new game, juxtaposed to the feral, game-hungry mentality that I possess. And while this is perfectly normal and understandable, it may also complicate things a bit when trying to tackle games such as Hollow Knight. Team Cherry did a phenomenal job keeping the game simple with its limited demands for button inputs, but in turn made Hollow Knight an easy-to-learn, hard-to-master kind of game. And for those who fall out of the game early due to hard initial bosses, intimidating Metroidvania-styled map layouts, lack of familiarity with game mechanics, or a simple inability to play due to a shortage of time, Hollow Knight is most definitely not the easiest game to put down and come back to after a prolonged break from playing. This isn't to say that it's impossible to come back, or that it's even painstakingly difficult overall, just that returning players might find themselves struggling continuously with the same mechanics they were having a difficult time grasping prior to their previous break, perpetually maintaining the sense of hopelessness with actually being able to enjoy the game. As a result, there's a stagnation of sorts when it comes to the skill building that Hollow Knight demands from its players, and, in turn, a portion of people may not actually ever get the chance to fully beat all of the unique bosses and see all of the breathtaking areas that this magnificent little game has to offer. But not anymore. If you're one of these people that put the game down or have been stuck on a particular part for quite some time, this one goes out to you directly. The purpose of this video is to be a serviceable foundation for all who would be otherwise dissuaded from facing the challenges of this game, and to bridge the gap between newly hesitant or returning players and all that Hollow Knight has to truly offer. After all the time I've spent with the game, I think it's at least reasonable to surmise that I've been able to pick up on most of the trends and recurring themes that the enemies, locations, and gameplay use to test the mettle of its players. As such, I'll hopefully be able to streamline these topics into more easily digestible, coherent points to try and help out those who seek to return to the game or are just now starting their own journey. And with Silksong coming soon, this is the perfect time to re-enter the world of Hallownest to give yourself another shot, or your very first attempt at the game so you'll be good to go when the sequel drops. These tips will be in no particular order of importance, and I won't be going heavily in depth with each point so I don't overflow you all with a bunch of niche information about the game that you probably could just pick up on your own anyway. Instead, I'm just going to focus on providing some quick, simple tips or advice to help smooth out the process of familiarizing oneself with the world of Hallownest. Without further ado, let's jump into this newcomers and returning players guide to picking up Hollow Knight. First of all, try not to get frustrated. This is obviously way more easily said than done, but trust me when I say that excess frustration never helps overcome certain obstacles in this game. And although this is something that applies to plenty of other games as well, I believe it's particularly important to understand when it comes to Hollow Knight. If you find yourself starting to get irregularly upset or downright angry over being unable to complete certain areas or bosses, just take a step back and give yourself a brief intermission to help clear your mind. Hollow Knight punishes you in ways that are very specific and particular in hopes that you learn something from every mistake, but this misses the mark entirely if you're just getting yourself more and more worked up. Try your best to keep your patience, but walk away for brief periods when you feel like you can't. There's no shame at all in taking the time to collect yourself so you can come back with a stronger mental fortitude. So do whatever it is that keeps the game difficult and fun at the same time, all the time. You can learn something from everything. As a little segue from the previous point, Hollow Knight is a game that isn't exactly nice and easy for the average player. You should be fully prepared, or simply just outright expect, to die, get lost, and constantly engage with increasingly difficult tasks as the game progresses. But the important thing here is that it's not about how many times you get thrashed and trashed from all the potential things that can kill you in the game. And there are lots of them. It's about being able to learn why things are happening, why you keep getting hit, why you keep dying to this boss, and why you can't easily get through an area. As I said before, Hollow Knight objectively yearns to make you take something helpful away from even the most simple tasks in the game. Try changing up your attack patterns to help you take less hits. Try paying more attention to boss movesets or your own positioning to help you get past that tough boss. Try leaving the unreasonably tough area and look for another route to take for the time being so you can come back with more upgrades and abilities later on. If you feel as if you're excessively struggling with a certain enemy or place, chances are you're overlooking something crucial or haven't exhausted all the potential options, tools, and capabilities you have to go about finding success. Take a look at the bigger picture and try to understand what the game is suggesting from each part you're struggling with. There's always an answer, you just have to figure out where to find it. Get ready to do some backtracking. Something you should be heavily aware of when starting out a Metroidvania is the fact that your map is the key to backtracking. If you aren't used to using maps in other games you play, Hollow Knight is the perfect introduction to using a streamlined, concise, and easily accessible map. Nothing on it is too much all at once, and the pins and markers that Izelda gives you, which I heavily recommend that you invest in during your first run at least, can significantly help cut down on the amount of backtracking that you have to do. Using markers on areas you can't quite reach early on is one of the simplest actions you can take to reduce the amount of stress felt later on when trying to find new areas, bosses, and items once you're equipped with more abilities. Hollow Knight is filled to the absolute brim with hidden secrets, and the game is specifically designed to make you revisit certain areas after you go a different direction to get a necessary tool first. As somebody who's had his fair share of getting lost in Hallownest time and time again, even after beating the game to its entirety, I can't stress how important it is to help yourself out early on by keeping up with your map. You gotta trust me on this one, the future you will be grateful. I'll make this one simple. If you get some new abilities, you should probably get used to using them as well. In a lot of RPG-styled games, or even in a few Metroidvanias, there can occasionally be an emphasis on really good endgame items overshadowing upgrades that you get early on. For example, keeping in line with the Castlevania references, you can acquire a double jump in the game, which opens up a ton of new avenues for you to visit. But later on, you quite literally get the ability to turn into a bat, or use gravity boots to soar through the air like some sort of vampiric Soviet warhead. There's nothing wrong with any of these items, but double jumping becomes a lot less useful later on in the game due to the other tools you can use which fulfill the same role, and arguably do so better depending on the situation, of course. But as far as Hollow Knight is concerned, every single ability and upgrade you get is unique and special in its own way. The main reason I believe this point is as important as it is because I've personally seen people get an upgrade, use it a few times, then just go through a handful of areas and bosses without touching it ever again. I won't say which upgrades work best in which specific scenarios, but I can assure you that every single spell, nail art, and movement ability you get is incredibly useful from start to finish. As such, you don't ever have to worry about starting to like an upgrade only for you to ditch it later on in favor of something more efficient. So there's a much greater incentive to learn all the benefits and drawbacks to each upgrade as soon as you get it. In addition, there are numerous bosses and areas which straight up require specific upgrades to even access them, or are substantially easier with particular methods of damage output. So the more familiar you are with your own tools early on, the more mentally equipped you'll be when it's crunch time to beat a really tough boss. It's fairly evident that Team Cherry worked really hard not to just bombard us with multiple abilities that become progressively outdated. but to instead give us memorable, genuinely useful tools that consistently have purpose. And I'm all but certain that this one-of-a-kind game design will resurface in Silksong with how the tool system works there, so try to take full advantage of this as early as you can. There are quests in this game, but you don't have to panic about getting them done. Not trying to compare this game to Dark Souls again, but I'm going to compare this game to Dark Souls again. In lots of other franchises, particularly titles in FromSoft's Soulsborne series, it can be super stressful and punishing if you feel like you're missing out on a particular questline. In these games, you have to do very specific things in extremely articulate steps. Otherwise, the entire questline will be shot, and you'll have to wait for a new run to do it all over again. And there are a lot of side quests in these games, so doing everything in one playthrough, especially if it's your first playthrough, is virtually impossible unless you're following some type of guide. Thankfully, Hollow Knight is nothing like this. Before discussing the base game, I'll note here that while we have no confirmation on how Silksong's NPC appearances during questing will work, you can bet your bottom bug booty that the tasks in Silksong will most definitely play a larger role with a voiced protagonist, so brushing up on your questing maneuvers in the original game will almost certainly help out for the next game too. But as far as Hollow Knight is concerned, the only character in the game that is affected by whether or not you choose to do things in a timely manner is Zote. But I'm not going to spoil what these events are. Every single other character with a quest tied to them can essentially be done at any time because your save file doesn't get erased or force you to start over when you reach any given ending. Keep in mind, however, that this doesn't mean you won't miss out on some things. There are certain instances where you can find NPCs in specific areas where you might miss out on their supplemental dialogue if you never visit other areas first, or trigger some events before others. But excluding Zote, you won't ever miss out on their questline as a whole. You can even visit the wiki to look up their dialogue as well, if you think you missed something after beating the game. Which is a great segue to the last point. Play the game however you want to play it. For games like this, I personally love to go in blind. There's just something so satisfying and exciting about peeling a game back layer by layer and never knowing what comes next. Unfortunately, a lot of that can be taken away if you spoil the surprises for yourself by using external sources to guide you through the game. But what works for me won't necessarily work for everyone, and that's completely okay. Don't be afraid or ashamed to check out some online resources to help you on your journey through Hallownest. We've already talked about how much there is to find in Hollow Knight, so using something like the wiki can be a huge time saver if you're just looking up things like health upgrades, weapon damage, or charm slots. And don't be afraid of spoilers. The Hollow Knight community in the wiki is pretty sensitive with information and delicate with descriptions of things, so you won't get the bulk of upcoming locations and bosses spoiled by looking up some simple information. I can easily see how people may become dissuaded from playing by getting lost, so don't just stop playing altogether because you can't figure out where to go or where to find certain items. There are plenty of resources at your disposal that'll be able to help you without ruining the overall core experience that Hollow Knight has to offer. And there you have it, an amalgamation of tips and suggestions thrown together by some guy you don't even know you can trust. Good luck! All jokes aside, I really hope all you new and returning players could at least find a thing or two helpful in this video. This was originally something I never considered because I kind of figured that not a lot of people would really care about my opinions on how newer players should approach the game, but with Silksong on the horizon, there's also a window of opportunity for people who haven't gotten around to playing Hollow Knight to finally give it a shot. I had a lot of fun thinking of the things I wish I knew when entering the game, but hopefully I could pass on some knowledge that's been accumulated throughout my time spent with it to ease the burdens of those just starting out. I also kept this list as streamlined as I could because, as I stated before, I didn't just want to bombard you all with some pretty obvious things like remember to buy maps or health upgrades are really helpful. So if you liked what I came up with here and you'd like to see some more tips for newcomers, or even just some general tips overall, make sure to let me know and I'll see what I can do. As always, the link to my Twitter is going to be in the description for us to keep in touch outside of YouTube. But that's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.